قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين.
Alhamdulillah, all praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is my voice loud enough? All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who allowed us to come to His house in a Fajr prayer, one of the best prayers. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward us for that. And also, alhamdulillah, that He had allowed us to attend a circle of knowledge where we seeking a knowledge of Islam. We just want to increase some knowledge. We were studying the poem of Al-Bayquniyyah. We reached to the line 19. We're going to start today. الأول الإسقاط للشيخ وأن ينقل عما فوقه بعن وأن. So the author says, inshallah, I'm going to continue. He says, Al-Awwal. He was talking about Al-Hadith al-Mudallis or Al-Tadlis fil Hadith. That's what he was talking about. Tadlis is when the person is not that clear enough, when he's like hiding something. When the narrator is trying to hide something, it's called Tadlis. He said that the line before, he said وَمَا أَتَى مُدَلِّسًا نَوْعَانِ. And the thing that is mudallis, the hadith that is mudallis, the concealed one, is two types. Al-Awwal is going to explain. The first type of hadith al-mudallis, the hadith that which concealed, is al-isqatu lish-shaykhi. Sometimes the shaykh is dropped. The student is going to drop his shaykh. وَأَن يَنْقُلَ, and he narrates عَمَّنْ فَوْقَهُ بِعَنْ وَأَنْ. He's going to narrate from the person who is above from his shaykh by using an and an. مثلا, one of my shuyukh is Shaykh Ibrahim. So sometimes I could be a person who does not have a good memory. It's one of my problems. I cannot remember. I lose my keys all the time. So if you narrate from me and you say an ahmedulHadi, people will throw that hadith because I did not meet the criteria of the hadith of Sahih. So to hide that, they will jump it. They say an Shaykh Ibrahim. That's my shaykh who taught me the Musalih hadith. So we say it an Shaykh Ibrahim. It's not a lie. It was narrated from Shaykh Ibrahim, which is the shaykh of my shaykh. So you're hiding me, you're doing tadlis, you're concealing me, so that this hadith continues. It could be a reason that the person is not good loved memory, the person is doubted. There's many reasons. So they use an. مثلا, or you use an as he said it. An is like أن شيخ إبراهيم. That's my shaykh is أن Shaykh Ibrahim قال كذا كذا. So you hide one person so that you avoid the people of hadith and rijal of hadith. The people of rijal who do al-jarh wa ta'dil, they don't play around. If they see small problem with the person, he could be a good person, but they will leave that person's hadith just to keep the deen of Islam clear and inshallah authentic. So that's how it happens at tadlis. He says al-awwal al-isqatu lish-shaykh. The first type of tadlis, concealing the person, the rawi, the narrator, is al-isqatu lish-shaykh. You drop the shaykh. وَأَن يَنْقُلْ, and to narrate or to relate عَنْ مَنْ فَوْقَهُ, the person on the top of the shaykh, by using an and an. And as we mentioned before, when the ulama of hadith, it comes to an, they're very cautious. The person, when he uses an, and you'll see sometimes in the hadith, عن عمر عن مثلا عن مالك عن نافع عن, they're gonna look at it. They're very cautious with it. They're gonna check the person who's using an. If a person who is very known in his thiqah, in his trustworthiness, they usually take his an. But if the person is not sure or they don't know him that much, when he uses an is like a majhul. They call it passive. Yeah, it's passive, it's a majhul. It was narrated. You did not say, I hear it or he told me. That's more authentic. When I say, I hear from so and so and so, that's more authentic to relate that story. And we're talking about relating the hadith, how the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ was delivered to us. What was the signs that they used to clarify which sayings was authentically reported from the Prophet, which is not. So that's what they were trying to do. So they use the amman fawqahu bi'an. So they're very careful. If the person using an'ana, and we passed the line of an'ana, what he was saying it. And what was the line of an'ana? Mu'an'anun ka'an sa'idin an karam. They said mu'an'an is like an sa'id an karam. That's an example. So we want to use that type of, they're very cautious. It depends on the person, but usually they drop it if the person is not known. مثلا عن of Malik عن Nafi'. They say well-known people, they took their an'ana, they trust them. Otherwise they don't trust them, because everybody could use an'ana. والثاني, the second type of al-tadlis, of concealing the hadith, لا يسقطه. You're not going to drop the shaykh, you're not going to drop it. لكن but يصف أوصافه بما لم ينعرف. They do describe the person in an awsaf, in a descriptions that the people could not recognize or is not recognized. So مثلا you use like his laqab. You say مثلا Abu Abdul Manan, people know me. I have another kid مثلا Samiha Dara, you say Abu Samiha مثلا. People don't know me, so just to hide me you say Abu Samiha. Or sometimes you say حدثنا بعض السلف مثلا. Some of the Salaf had told us. You know, it's tadlis. Who is from the Salaf told you that? حدثنا بعض من جلس للتحديث. Some of the people sat for giving a hadith, they told us that and that. Who are they? We do not know them. So usually they're going to check the person who uses the type of tadlis, and it depends on the person. And also they need explanation of who. If there is another narrations in another ways that is explained who was this person, then they're going to usually take it. If not, they're very cautious. Sometimes some people, they say حدثني, the example that he's giving in the book now I'm using, he says حدثني من أنفه بين عيني. He says somebody whose his nose is between his eyes told me. Who is that? Yeah, that's the worst type of tadlis, right? Yeah, somebody playing around. So they throw that person. Okay. So this is first type is isqat al-shaykh. They're gonna throw the shaykh by going amman fawqahu bi'an wa an. The person who is above that shaykh, they're gonna go an. They're gonna use that way. The second type is la yusqituhu. They don't drop the shaykh. Rather, they did give him a wasf, a description that the people do not know about him. So they usually, that hadith usually gets da'if. They usually get hadith da'if. And again, it depends into the person who's saying it, who is narrating it. وَمَا يُخَالِفُ. Now, that was al-hadith al-mudallas. Now he's going to tell you a shad. You guys know a shad? What was a shad? We passed it. One of the conditions of the hadith sahih. What was it? What did we explain it? What was the ta'arif of shad? Yes, when the person, a thiqah, contradicts more thiqah than him. Somebody who's trustworthy contradicts somebody who's more trustworthy than him. مثلا, this person is good, we know him, and he couldn't, مثلا, students, let's say, a student who's B, always gets B and he's good, sometimes attend, sometimes attend, contradicts another student who's A, all the time attend the classes. So when he contradicts it, we're going to tell you, this hadith shad. This hadith shad, it's contradiction hadith. He says, وَمَا يُخَالِفُ ثِقَّةً فِي الْمَلَأِ. And the narration, the relating in which the thiqah, a person who's trustworthy, contradicts al-mala. Al-mala, it could be a group of numbers. Allah says, وَقَالَ الْمَلَأُ الَّذِينَ. And the group of people say that. In the Quran, sometimes it means al-mala as a group, and sometimes it means as the leaders. It could mean the leaders to al-mala. Either way is going to be correct. Leaders, it means the thiqah, the people who has hufaz, the people who are trustworthy. So when you contradict these people, وَمَا يُخَالِفُ ثِقَّةً فِي الْمَلَأِ, whatever thiqah, a person who's trustworthy, when he contradicts, goes against a group of numbers of thiqat or trustworthiness, that hadith is called ash-shadh. The hadith shadh is something always goes out of nature. That's why homosexual, they call it shudud. This is out of normal. So anything out of normal is contradicts, called the shudud. وَمَا يُخَالِفُ ثِقَّةً فِي الْمَلَأِ, that is fashad. That's called hadith of shad. That's hadith of shad. And that hadith always is da'if. It's da'if because he contradicted another people who is more trustworthy than him. مثلا, a group can narrate it from their shaykh a hadith مثلا. Then one of them, like مثلا in this gather, I said a statement, I made a statement, everybody took a statement. One person, maybe you guys were sitting again on some gather, somebody said, Imam said that we can do that, that. Then the rest, they say, no, Imam did not say you can do it. Rather, Imam said you cannot do it. Then that's clear, right? There's a person who is one by himself, that's the one who made a mistake. Same thing, hadith happens. They narrate it from one person, a group of numbers in one way, and another person, he says, no, he narrates this way. So usually they say the person who narrates opposite than the mala, then the group that's shad. The hadith is shad and is da'if. It's da'if. That's fashad. Now he's going to talk about wal-maqlubu qismani tala. And the next is al-maqlub, and the maqlub, hadith al-maqlub is two types. Now we mentioned two hadith, inshallah I want to recap it so that everybody gets it. Number one, we said it, hadith al-mudallas, the hadith that is concealed. We said it's in two types. They do conceal by dropping the shaykh and narrating from the person who is above the shaykh by using an. The second type of tadlis, the second type of concealing, is not to drop the shaykh, rather to give him a description that the people do not know him for. Understood? Okay. The next one we mentioned, hadith al-shad, the hadith which is contradiction. And that's what is the hadith which contradiction? The hadith that a person who is trustworthy, a student, a good student, contradicts another group of numbers, or another person who is more thiqa than him. It could be he contradicts a group of people, or he contradicts another person who is more knowledgeable. Am I making sense? Okay. The next one is wal maqlub, the hadith of maqlub. They call it, the one is switched or the flipped hadith. Qismani tala. It's two types. Number one is ibdalu rawin ma bi rawin. Switching a narrator and a narrator to another narrator is one type. مثلا, let us say مثلا عن أحمد عن جاش مثلا. Okay, it was narrated from Ahmad he narrated from Jash. So if we switch, it's going to be عن جاش and عن أحمد. So when the person do that flip, and one time he says عن أحمد عن جاش and Ahmad second time, that's called ibdalu rawin ma birawin. He switched two narrators together. عن عمرو عن محمد عن عمرو. The two names the same. So he switched sometimes. You may see some hadith, some narrators. When they do that, automatically that hadith they call it maqlub. They have two narrations. One says عن أحمد عن محمد. The second narration says عن محمد عن أحمد. They say this hadith is ضعيف. This hadith is ضعيف. Why? Yes, the person does not have a memory. He's missing up. So by him doing that, he misses a condition of authenticity, which is al-dhabt. Okay, ibdalu rawin ma bi rawin qism. Switching with the chain, one person for another, that is one type of hadith of maqlub. So once they see that from the person, that hadith they do not take from him. And always the hadith usually comes with different chains of narrations. It comes that way. If sometimes you might see the hadith comes only one way, like the hadith of An Umar radiallahu anhu, the hadith of إنما الأعمال بالنيات is very authentic, and again they call that hadith is fard, is unique hadith, or gharib, strange hadith. Inshallah we're going to go into it. So first type of hadith al-maqlub is ibdalu rawin ma bi rawin, switching two rawi from each other. مثلا حدثني يوسف عن يعقوب, then the person says حدثني يعقوب عن يوسف. That's usually what happens, and that's forgetfulness. So because of that, the person, they don't take this hadith. The second type of ibdal is قلب إسناد لمتن, switching a chain of narration by flipping a chain of narration to another text. The hadith of مثلا, and the first hadith of أربعين النووي is عن عمر رضي الله عنه إنه قال سمعت الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما الأعمال بالنيات. The second one is عن عمر رضي الله عنه أيضا. That's the same narrator, but you go to another hadith مثلا, have a different chain narration, different narrator, you switch it. This type also shows nisyan. The person, he cannot remember the chains of narration to the text. So this shows that weakness of his memory. So if the person does that, also they don't take it. He takes this chain of narration, puts to that hadith, and that chain of narration to that hadith does not belong to each other. Does not belong to each other. That shows also the weakness of the memory of the person who is narrating that hadith. That's the second type of the hadith of maqlub. Is qalbu isnadin li matnin qismu. Switching, flipping isnad to another matan is another type. Okay. Usually, if the person does it, that's because of forgetfulness. Sometimes they use it for testing, like the way they did it to the people of Baghdad, to Imam al-Bukhari. I mentioned that story at the beginning of Sahih al-Bukhari, that they wanted to test Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah. They brought 10 scholars of hadith, of hufad of hadith, from all over Iraq, and they brought them to Baghdad to test Imam al-Bukhari, and they started switching this chain of narration to that context. If you notice that Imam al-Bukhari in that story, he says it, La arif, I do not know. You do not know, because once you switch a chain of narration to another matan, to another text, that's not a hadith at all. That's weak, because you flip it. That's why he said, La arif, I do not know. I don't know this hadith. Until they counted 100 hadith, each one read it 10 with a flipping, switching the chains of narration, and he was saying, I do not know to all of the 100. And the people, they saying, what's wrong with this guy? This was the one that they were telling us about Bukhari. He doesn't know 100 hadith. Until he went back and he said, for you, the first shaykh, you said that and that. One of the good thing is that he even remembered their mistakes. He said, for the first one, you said that and that and that. It was not that. Rather, it's an hebel, qala sallallahu. And it's the second hadith you narrated, you said that and that and that. Rather, no, or correct, that's the way. An hebel, Hebel is Somali, by the way. I don't know why I'm saying it. An fulan, an fulan, narrated from so and so, until Rasulullah. So he corrected all this hadith. Sometimes so they do ibdal to matan for testing, and that showed the memory of Imam al-Bukhari. By even remembering 100 hadith, remember 100 hadith and 100 different of chains of narrations with their mistakes is very difficult to remember. It's not actually, it's kind of sahil in this generation. That's type of what? Second type of al-hadith al-maqlub, the flipped hadith. Yeah, the second type of the flipped hadith. So ibdalu rawin ma birawin, switching the two narrators. That's one type of hadith maqlub. And the second type is ibdalu switching a matan to isnad is another type of the hadith of maqlub. There's third type of hadith maqlub that the author did not mention, which is matan maqlub. Sometimes they switch the hadith in its matan. There's hadith of Rasulullah about the 7 people Allah will shade them in His shade. A day there is no shade but the shade. It's Allah to make us those, inshallah. So one of it says that وَرَجُلٌ تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ, a person who donates, gives a sadaqah, فَأَخْفَاهَا, and he hides it, that sadaqah, he does not show off, until his shimal does not know مَاذَا تُنْفِقُ يَمِينُهُ, what his right hand gives it. So you might see some narration says that حتى لا تعلم يمينه ما تنفق شماله, until his right hand does not know what his shimal gives it. So that narration is maqlub. The person who was narrating made a mistake by saying حتى تعلم يمينه ما تنفق شماله. His right hand does not know what his left hand. So it doesn't make sense, right? Left hand does not give, right? The right hand rather gives it. So that hadith is a hadith of maqlub. Maqlub fil matan. They switch it the matan. That's one. There's another hadith. Says that إنه يبقى في النار فضل عمن دخلها فينشئ الله لها أقوام يدخلهم النار. The hadith says that there will be space in the hellfire after the people of fire went to hellfire. Then Allah creates another people to go to hellfire, to fill it hellfire. So this hadith is munqalib. The Rawi made a mistake. First, it does not make sense that there is not an adl of Allah that to create somebody just to punish that person without whom doing anything, just to throw him to hellfire and to fill it to hellfire. Rather, this hadith is maqlub. The hadith it was figured out in another narrations that the hadith was saying and Allah. And anyway, overall we know that how the hellfire is filled. There's another hadith, says authentic hadith says that when the nar gets people of hellfire go to hellfire, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says hal min mazid. When hellfire says if there's any increasement, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put his feet on a nar and they will say it qat qat the way it deserved to him. So that hadith says that people created that's maqloob, and it's not authentic hadith, it's flipped hadith. Rather it was a jannah. The word of nar and jannah, he switched it, he flipped it. It was like a jannah would get, when the people of jannah goes to jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would create a group of people to go into jannah. Another narration also supports it. So the people of, this is illah, illah in the hadith. The people of hadith who has a deep knowledge of hadith will figure out this hadith. They say, no, this is not because of that. It is a shad. First, it contradicts a lot of our hadith. Number two is maqloob, he switched the person nar and hellfire. And it's easy to make this type of mistake. So the hadith is maqloob in matan. It happens there. Okay. The third type of today that we made is hadith of maqloob. Either it gets into change of narration by switching two narrators, or a type of switching matan to another matan, matan to a chain of narrations. And sometimes it happens, as I mentioned, matan also can be maqloob. Okay. والحديث الفرد, the hadith of fard today, inshallah. The fard is the one is singular hadith. ما قيدته, what you confined, what's قيد, but only قيد, what you confined بثقة, a trustworthy person. It's a hadith that was narrated by a trustworthy person. One person narrates and he's a trustworthy. That's called al-hadith al-fard. Also it's called al-hadith al-gharib, as we passed in, from the previous lines. مثلا hadith of إنما الأعمال بالنيات. This hadith is narrated in a 3 tabaqat by one person. And 3 tabaqat was narrated by Umar, a companion. Only you won't see any another companion narrate this hadith. Or إنما الأعمال بالنيات. It's fard. So the hadith of fard, the singular hadith, is ما قيدته بثقة, when a thiqah narrates it. So if the person is thiqah and the conditions of the authenticity is fulfilled, the hadith is sahih. That's why the hadith in Imam Al-Bayquniyyah, regardless of how many people narrates it. So he's just giving you a ta'rif. ما قيدته with. Oh, sometimes it happens. Oh, jam'. Sometimes a group of people narrates. A group of people in one city, مثلا, one tribe or one group narrates. You say this hadith. You say the hadith of Sham. The people of Sham only narrates. The people in Medina narrates this hadith. So it could be sometimes the hadith could go into one. It could be famous for one group. It's called also the hadith of fard, because one only group people narrates it. أو قصر على روايته. Sometimes one riwayah is narrated by one person, but this hadith is a mashhur hadith, well known. In the different other narrations is well known, but this riwayah only, these people, Josh only knows this riwayah, this chains of narration. The rest is not, is famous. Everybody else narrates, but in this way, and again, this hadith you're going to just check again the shurut of the conditions of the authenticity. So let us divide it into two when it comes to singular hadith. Sometimes the person narrates a hadith does not contradict another hadith, or does not contradict another thiqah. Okay, a riwayah which does not contradict another riwayah, and is a singular riwayah. So if the person narrates that riwayah is authentic, trustworthy person, his hadith is what? If he fulfills the conditions of a hadith of Sahih, what is that hadith? No, the hadith is fard. One person narrates it, but that person fulfilled the entire conditions of the authenticity. What gets it? It will be sahih. That hadith is sahih. So and again, another hala, it could be the narrator is not a good memory, but is okay narrator. What gets it? And he does not contradict nobody. Hasan, the hadith is hasan. If the narrator is weak, what it gets the hadith? The hadith gets da'if. So that's how the hawal gets the what's that? Yeah, the way it gets it, the way it gets it. So when the hadith gets mufrad, either in 3 ahwal, either in 3 situations. Situation 1, the person who narrates that singular hadith is trustworthy and a good person, like Umar, and Umar bin his hadith gets sahih. Sometimes it happens the person just let a problem in it. His singular hadith, and the hadith that does not contradict, does not have any other problems in the authentic hadith, then it gets hadith hasan. The rawi, it could be sometimes a weak person and the hadith is singular. That hadith singular does not contradict any hadith, but the person is weak. What gets it? The hadith gets weak. But what about if the person contradicts another hadith? Okay, it's another narrator. then it's going to be in this hala. First situation is that when the narrator and the person who disagrees are in the same level, both are thiqat, no one higher than the other one. Okay, two people narrate two different chains of narration, مثلا. So A and B, narrator A and narrator B are equal, and when it comes to the thiqa and everything, they're equal. But they contradict. This hadith says that, and this hadith says that. So that hadith is called mudarib, confused hadith. We're going to talk about it, inshallah. This second line after this. Number two, if two people, okay, narrator A is trustworthy, narrator B is not trustworthy, or is not as trustworthy as A, then they contradict. What's called at that time? What is that? Pay attention, okay? Guys, pay attention. You didn't have a coffee? Narrator A is trustworthy person. Good thiqah, okay? Narrator 2B is okay person. And they contradict each other narrations. What is that hadith? That hadith is shad. It's hadith shad. So we don't take the narrator B because he contradicted somebody who is more trustworthy than him. Somebody who's more trustworthy. Sometimes it happens, see, the last situation is a narrator B, مثلا, and somebody A, let's say the narrator A is ضعيف, okay, ضعيف, somebody who is weak. When he contradicts somebody strong, somebody who's stronger than him, the one who is weak hadith, this hadith gets weak. This gets weak, and we call it munkar hadith. Munkar hadith. That's why you hear that. You're gonna explain at the end. And this one is actually, it's just general explanation. As I told you, I'm just expecting that you know the line. You just know the line. So this is a general explanation. So that's ahwal, it gets a hadith. Should I repeat those statements? I made it or understood? It makes me worry when the people do not say anything. Okay, let me repeat myself. We're talking about the hadith of fard, okay? The unique hadith, the singular hadith. The first situation is when the unique hadith does not contradict any other hadith, okay? Then it's in three situations, that one. The first situation A is that the narrator of that singular hadith is trustworthy, is a good person. Then regardless of being him singular, by him narrating that hadith by himself, that hadith is sahih, like hadith in Imam Al-Bayquniyyah. The second situation is that narrator also could be not very thiqah and not bad. The scholars of Rijal, Ilm al-Rijal, Al-Jarh wa Ta'dil, they did not talk bad about him. Then at that time is going to be his hadith. Although he's a singular, he's the only one who narrated that hadith, but we don't have many things against him, and he fulfilled the conditions that girls hadith of Hasan. Sometimes it happens the person who narrated that hadith, singular hadith, but the narrator is weak. He's weak, but he does not contradict. He does not contradict any other hadith. Then that hadith also gets da'if. It's da'if, regardless who you contradict or not. Okay, situation A was that way, where the singular hadith which does not contradict any other person. The second way is when he contradicts somebody, a singular hadith, but the narrator contradicts somebody else, some other chains of narration. So then it's in three ahwal. Number one, situation A, possibility A is probability. Probability A is that A and B both are equal. Both of them are equal in Jarh wa Ta'dil. Both of them could be good. Two good people, their hadith are taken, but they contradict each other. Then we said it, and was mudarib, we call it mudarib. Yeah, we call it mudarib. It's going to be the second line, inshallah. We're going to do it now. Situation B, it could be the two people, the hadith which is singular. It's a singular hadith, that the person who narrates that hadith is trustworthy, but he contradicts somebody who's more trustworthy than him. Shad, that hadith gets shad. So the third situation is weak person who narrates one singular hadith, then he contradicts Malik and Nafi'. Some people who are more trustworthy than him. So still is shad, that hadith, but the hadith of the weak person, we call it munkar. Munkar. It's false, it's lying. It's lying. So مثلا that can happen. مثلا hadith narrated from here. Like, مثلا hadith is just anything I say somebody or somebody says it. You narrate it. So when somebody who's weak does not attend the class, he came maybe one time and he was sleeping and he was not even paying attention. Then he contradicts some people who's more trusted. Everybody attended, memorized the line and everything. He contradicts that person. Must that hadith be munkar? What he said is munkar. It's fabricated. It's nothing but lie. Because he's not a thiqa, he's da'if anyway. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? Inshallah. You need to have a math memory. Yeah, we're going to talk about mawdu' and munkar. I don't want to get into it. All of them is going to be the last 3 lines.
I'm talking about the munkar. Because you mentioned fabricate.
Yeah, it's hadith munkar. Munkar is like return. Is returned, is thrown. But inshallah we're going to explain what's hadith of munkar, what's hadith of mawdu', the weak hadith, fabricate and all that, yeah. Okay, مضطرب. Are we in the مضطرب? Yeah. وذو اختلاف سند أو متن. When there is اختلاف in the chains of narration or in the text, that اختلاف مضطرب is called hadith مضطرب عند أهيل الفني, by the masters of this game, means this science of hadith. We call it the hadith مضطرب. So when there is اختلاف in the sanad, where you cannot combine it, some says this way was narrated, and then another person says this way narrated. مثلا, even by switching the matan or the maqlub, مثلا hadith al-maqlub, somebody narrates says عن محمد عن أحمد مثلا, or مثلا let's use a name like مثلا عن بدر عن موسى. Somebody else narrates the hadith, says that عن موسى عن بدر. It was maqlub, although it's hadith maqlub, but this are ikhtilaf. They have this two ikhtilaf. Can it be reconciled? Can it be both true? But if they're the same era, yes. Like now they're the same era, yeah. But when we're talking about hadith, they're not the people of the same era, but people who are different. So if they are two people, Malik and Malik and Nafi' can happen, but an Nafi' and Malik cannot happen. You know what I mean? They could be in a different era. I mean, not only 2, actually 3. One, عن Malik, عن Nafi', عن Muhammad. Somebody can start from Muhammad, مثلا, عن Muhammad, عن Nafi', عن Malik. It cannot happen. That's اختلاف in sanad. Or matan, sometimes there could be اختلاف in the chains of narration. The hadith it was narrated 2 different ways. This hadith says you can do this. Another hadith says you cannot do this. You cannot combine it. You cannot reconcile it. And you cannot choose. If you can choose one over the other one, is مثلا, if you can choose one over the other one, then the second one gets shad and you're going to throw it and you're going to take the thiqqa one. So sometimes you might see a hadith but you cannot choose from each other. The scholars مثلا, they say Hajj of the Prophet, some they say there's 3 types of hadith, then they say it was qiran, it was tamattu', it was ifrad. This is the 3 types of hadith, and they say it's very hard to reconcile it. They call it hadith muddarib. Unless we find another narrations clearly says that, which is not muddarib, we may take. So sometimes you might see an hadith that contradicts. And the scholars of hadith, they cannot choose one over the other one. They cannot choose other or because of the people of the narrators are all the same levels. Then they call it muddarib and they don't take it. Okay, when 2 hadith there is ikhtilaf in the 2 hadith, the different ways of hadith, but cannot be reconciled. Sometimes ikhtilaf can be reconciled, okay? Sometimes can be reconciled. But if they cannot be reconciled and the 2 people are authentic, means that one of them made a mistake. Means one of them made a mistake. Now the Prophet made a mistake, but one of the narrators made a mistake. But we do not know which one made a mistake. So we cannot take a chance with hadith. We cannot flip a coin and say, let's flip a coin and we're going to take this hadith, or this makes a better sound. You cannot take it that way. So just to stay away by getting in chance a weak hadith or a wrong information from the Prophet, because of that ittirab, they don't take the hadith at all. That's called muddarib al-hadith. But it's obvious one of them is correct. It's obvious one of them are correct, but we do not know which one is correct. So you clear yourself, stay in a safe situation. It's called the muddarib. وذو اختلاف سند أو متن مضطرب عند أهيل الفن. When there is اختلاف in the sanad which cannot be reconciled. The اختلاف, you should notice that in your letter on your book. So the اختلاف that we're talking about, اختلاف that cannot be reconciled nor can be chosen over one. Okay, you cannot choose one. If there's اختلاف between two people, one is very thiqqa and one is not thiqqa, then you take the very thiqqa. That's obvious. When there's one is very trustworthy, the other you take it, the other one gets shad. But the اختلاف that cannot be reconciled nor cannot be chosen one over another. Okay, you cannot choose maybe riwayah of Malik, riwayah of Nafi'. Both of them are good, very strong. Then at the time you just stay away from it. You call it hadith of مضطرب. والمدرجات, and this is the last line, inshallah. Let me recap. Shall I recap it? Okay, we spoke about the hadith of mudallis. Just pay attention to this, okay, guys? That's the way you seek a knowledge. Seeking a knowledge, you have to struggle. You have to be patient for it. The halaqat, it could be a little motivational. You may benefit from it, but this is the way to seek a knowledge, to study from a book. So الأول الحديث المدلس الإسقاط للشيخ. The concealed hadith is when the shaykh is dropped, and narrate from the person who is the top of the shaykh by using an and an. I give an example of مثلا مع شيخ إبراهيم, you drop me and you say the an Ibrahim or أن إبراهيم قال, and you did not lie. You did not lie when you said an Ibrahim. But it was narrated from, yes, it was narrated, but you did not narrate it. I narrated from Sheikh Ibrahim. You didn't make a mistake, and you didn't lie. Rather, you did it tadlis. You did it tadlis. You just played around. Okay, the scholars, they say, although some people they did it that way, that was not permissible to do it and do that tadlis in the anyway it happened. So we have to deal with it and have a ruling for it.
What's the status of such a hadith?
Such hadith, it depends on the person who says it. An hebel, مثلا. When you say an hebel, sometimes there's a possibility that the people do that way when they're not doing anything wrong. They just say the an, they use the an, it was narrated from that and that. So if the person says the an is very well known, very thiqqa, we take that hadith. But if he's not very good, very trustworthy, we just abstain from his hadith. We abstain from his hadith. That's called the first type of isqat. Second type of isqat is that, and tadlis again, the concealed hadith, that the person will not drop the shaykh, rather he describes him with a description that the people do not know him. Okay, قال بعض السلف قال أبو هبل أبو فلان مثلا, Abu Fulan said that and that, and the people don't know Abu Fulan. Okay, what I'm talking about, the second line, that's isqat with, that's hadith of tadlis. Now we're talking about shad. He said وما يخالف ثقة به الملأ. Whatever a person who is a thiqqa, trustworthy, goes against a group of people or goes against somebody who's more trust than him, that's called shadh. فالشاذ, that's full stop, okay? فالشاذ, full stop. Now he's going to start another thing. Full stop, put it there, full stop. Then والمقلوب is another mubtada. You're starting a new line, which is called al-maqlub. قسمان تلا. The maqlub is two types. Number one, إبدال راو ما براو قسم. And switching a rawi to another rawi is one type of maqlub. Give Yusuf and Muhammad and Muhammad and Yusuf مثلا. That shows that the bad memory of the person when he does that. Or isnad al-matan, you switch another isnad, the chain of narration, to another text. Also that shows the weakness of memory. So that's called maqlub. Maqlub is weak hadith. What we're talking about, fard now. The hadith of fard is what you confined by thiqqa, one person who's trustworthy narrated. That's fard hadith. Or jam', or a group of people. Even if you narrated me now from one hadith, all of you from me, then you take it out, the still hadith gets fard. It's unique hadith. Because this group only narrated, ICT group or whatever group narrated one hadith. Okay, أو قصر على رواية. The hadith is mashhur, is known. A lot of people narrated, but this narration, this chain of narration, only you guys narrated, or one person narrated. That's called fard, hadith of fard. That's called singular hadith. Singular hadith. Either it could be by one person or one group of people who live in the same era, or it could be on one riwayah, on one type of chain of narration. Now, والمدرجات is the next one? No. We're gonna come back. Yeah, we're gonna come back for it, inshallah. What's the next one? والاختلاف سند أو متن, when there is اختلاف in the sanad, when there is اختلاف in the chains of narration, أو متن or متن. What اختلاف I'm talking about? What type of اختلاف? I mentioned it. Cannot be reconciled, combined, nor can be chosen one over the other. They call it tarjih. That's called that اختلاف that he's talking about. Maybe you should put as a note. That's called مضطرب by the people of this fan, by the masters of this game. What is this game? The game of science of hadith, yes. والمدرجات, inshallah العلة, we're going to come back for it. والمدرجات في الحديث ما أتى, the hadith that is mudraj, الحديث المدرج, the interjections in the hadith, in the traditions, are ما أتى, is what have come to us, من بعض الرواة, from some of, من بعض ألفاظ الرواة, from the words of the narrators, اتصلت, are in the chains of narration continuous, in the chains continuous. So mudraj is a hadith that a narrator narrates it, then he explains that hadith without him clarifying this is his wording, without him clarifying this is his wording. That's called mudraj. So it's not a saying of the Prophet ﷺ, but rather is a saying of a narrator. He adds into hadith, and when he says that, he did not clarify, he did not say this is not the Prophet, rather this is my explanation. So sometimes it could be in the beginning. Mudraj always, it could be, sometimes it could be in the beginning. This in the matan, by the way. Mudraj is always in the matan, not in the chains of narration. It could be in the beginning. Matan, the hadith of Prophet ﷺ said, أسبغ الوضوء ويل للعقاب من النار. And then says أسبغ الوضوء means perfect your wudu, reach all the parts, means go as far as you can. Woe to the people who does not reach their aqab, or their ankles do not reach the water. They don't wash their ankles, they just wash the feet from the bottom. So the parts of وَيْلُ لِلْعَقَابِ مِنَ النَّارِ is what hadith of Prophet ﷺ said it. But Abu Huraira was explaining قوله أسبغ الوضوء فهو من كلام أبي هريرة. Abu Huraira said it. When you read it, you're going to see like this only one hadith, أسبغ الوضوء وَالْعَقَابِ مِنَ النَّارِ. So the part that Abu Huraira added to it, أسبغ الوضوء, and that's not a hadith of Prophet ﷺ, because he was talking to the person. There's another narration shows it. How do we know this? Mudrajat from other narrations. From other narrations, you're going to figure out this is one of the narrators added to it. So that type is called al-mudraj. Mudraj. Mudraj. وَيْلُ الْعَقَابِ مِنَ النَّارِ is a hadith of Prophet ﷺ, but Abu Huraira was talking to أسبغ الوضوء, perfect your wudu's. Woe to the people that is then he narrated hadith of Prophet ﷺ. And he did not clarify what was the wording of him and wording of Prophet ﷺ. The second, it could be in the middle of the hadith of that we passed in Sahih al-Bukhari. So he said, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يتحنث في غار حراء الليالي ذوات العدد. Prophet ﷺ that used to make ibadah in غار حراء. You will see what tahannuth is a ta'abbud. So the narrator put that التحنث التعبد is a mudraj. They added to it so that they explain what is tahannuth means. The word tahannuth means ta'abbud, worshipping Allah. This is a mudraj. Usually when they put it, you're going to see now, alhamdulillah, the printing is good. And when they say the hadith, they're going to put what they call it, dash before and dash after. You're going to see this is mudraj. It was added to the hadith. This is what I was. We're going to see what's the ruling of that idraj. It depends on what idraj. If something that explains the hadith, first condition we have to say this is not the saying of Prophet ﷺ, but we can keep it in there if it explains and it means okay. It means good. We're going to take it. We can use it. Okay. Sometimes it could be at the end of the hadith. The hadith of Prophet ﷺ said that Abu Hurairah in the hadith said, "Unna ummati yud'auna yawm al-qiyamati ghurran muhajjalin min athar al-wudu." The Prophet ﷺ, he said, my ummah will be called in the day of judgment by recognition of their body parts on wudu. فمن استطاع منكم أن يطيل غرته وتحجيله فليفعل. He says whoever can and make it long his wudu and can go farther, let him do it. Let him do it. So the first part of the hadith of Inna ummati, my ummah will be called the day of judgment غُرًّا مُحَجَّلِينَ مِنْ أَثَرِ الْوُضُوء, that's the Prophet ﷺ saying it. The second part of which says that whoever can go a little bit longer. This is not the saying of Rasulullah, rather is the sayings of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, just to explain it and encourage the people to go a little bit longer. So that's why he added it. That's why he added that jumla, the last sentence is called mudraj fil hadith, addition to the hadith. What's the rulings of the mudraj hadith? First, we cannot say it unless we clear out. We say it. This is idraj was added, and usually you can recognize by the printing. If it does not change in, the meaning, like مثلا in Zuhri, Imam Zuhri added التحنث والتعبد مثلا, if it does not change the meaning, لا بأس, there's no problem with it. But if there is wrong in it, it's not permissible and should be removed from the hadith. And also the idraj cannot be a hujjah. You cannot use it as a hujjah, as a proof for something, because Imam Zuhri used it. You cannot say this idraj, I'm going to use it as a proof. So that's called idraj. Let me repeat the line again. It says وَالْمُدْرَجَاتُ فِي الْحَدِيثِ مَا أَتَتْ, the interjections in hadith are what came من بعض ألفاظ الرواة اتصل, from the words of the narrators when they connected to it, when they added to it. You narrate a hadith, but when we explain a hadith, we explain it, and sometimes we say wordings and that's not part of hadith, just to explain the hadith. That's called mudraj, the hadith mudraj. Inshallah, one more class and we are done. One more class, we're done. How many lines? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. By the way, the last 2 lines does not need to be explained, because it says this is the name of the mudoma. So we have to explain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, and inshallah we should be done. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Shall I repeat the lines a minute, or you understood? Let me repeat it.